Good evening. Welcome to our monthly agenda setting meeting, both those of you attending in the audience tonight and those joining us remotely. If you'd like to have an agenda, they're to the right of the doors as you go out. For those that are watching us remotely, you can get an agenda on Athens-ClarkeCounty.com. We appreciate your interest and caring enough to join us. No final action will be taken on any items tonight. Items discussed tonight will be forwarded to our business meeting of October 1st for consideration and vote. If you have a cell phone with you, would you please, or any other electronic device, would you please turn them off or to silent? There'll be two opportunities tonight for citizen input. Our consent agenda, which are items 1 through 4, and new business items 5 through 7. We don't have any planning commission or zoning items tonight. Rules of commission allow citizens 3 minutes for comment. There's a timing clock on Ms. Bratlin's desk here, which will turn yellow at 2.5 minutes. So please try to complete your remarks before it turns red at 3 minutes so that there'll be no need to interrupt you. If you brought handouts with you that you'd like to share with us, please give them to Attorney Berryman, and he will make sure that we get those. We'll now begin our August 16th agenda setting meeting with our consent agenda. Items on our consent agenda have been reviewed by the agenda team, which is the mayor pro tem, attorney, and senior management staff. We're recommending for approval on Tuesday, September 6th, items that we're recommending for approval. The mayor or any commissioner may remove an item for discussion. So now we'll open the mic for public comment on the first 4 items on our agenda, which are our consent agenda. Would anyone like to speak to one of those items? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Is there any commissioner that would like to remove an item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go back to public comment on our regular agenda, which are, on our new business agenda, which are items 5 through 7. Anybody want to speak to any items 5 through 7? Okay, this may be a quick meeting tonight, Jim. Okay, we'll come behind the rail now. So we will start our meeting with, since no one wanted to move anything from the consent agenda, with item number 5 for discussion. Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank staff, particularly folks in Transportation Public Works, for putting this together. This is the Safe Routes to Schools plan for the H.T. Edwards complex, which many folks are familiar with behind AutoZone. I worked full-time on that campus during the early days of this planning, and still do a little bit of work on campus as well. As many people know, it's a multifunctional campus featuring the Athens Community Career Academy, Classic City High School, the Foothills Charter High School, an outpost of Athens Tech, where GED preparation classes take place, as well as Clarke County's Early Learning Center and a Boys and Girls Club outpost. So lots of activity coming and going. I think this is going to make a strong connection between that campus and the West Broad campus that I know Mike and Melissa have been spending a lot of time working on lately. And it's also going to connect, and Harry as well, and it's going to connect also to Hancock Street over toward the library. So I think this will allow all the users of that campus to get more safely to the places they're going to get to. So I'd be happy to see this go on consent.
Anybody else have an objection? Well, we'll put this on consent, Jen. Okay, item number 6, which is our TSPLOST program. Would anyone like to comment on that?
Mayor, if I might, just lead off with some of the changes we made based on what we heard at the work session, if that'd be appropriate.
That would be totally appropriate. Thank you.
So, great discussion, and again, that's exactly what the work sessions are for, are to receive some input. And so some of the things that we heard was that it was too rushed to try to identify members to do this important job of being on the Citizens Advisory Committee. And in the current version before you now, we have moved the mayor and commission appointment of the members to November the 1st, and could even go as far as December if you wanted to do that. So there's time to discuss that. We have added an opportunity for the mayor and commission to adjust the goals and project selection criteria. If you'll remember, there's a public forum shortly after the call for projects, and who knows what you might hear there. So there's an opportunity for you to telegraph back to the Citizens Advisory Committee that, hey, this is a priority we want y'all to address. So it's not hard and fast. We've added some more information about the duties required of the Citizens Advisory Committee to be very clear to them. And we added a decision point for geo-bonding no later than August 1st. So it's not as rushed as it was. We worked through that. And at that point, we will know more about the characteristics of the various projects and which would lend themselves more for bonding. And not the least of which we heard was that you felt like because of the holidays, the 3-month call for projects was not adequate. And we were able to go in, and because the TSPLOST is a little more focused as far as it's limited the types of projects you can do, we were able to give up some time from both staff review and the Citizens Advisory Committee, just a slight bit, to extend that another 2 months. So it could go from beginning of October to the end of February. So that's a 5-month call for projects, even though you do have the midst of. So we wanted to mitigate some of the concerns we heard at the work session. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Y'all did a good job on that. Ms. Link?
Yeah, I just have some questions. When will the guidelines for citizen proposed projects be made available?
Well, we are working on the form now. We've been coordinating on this for about a month now, trying to get ready. It will be ready either on or shortly after the voting meeting in October. And then we intend to have a couple of public meetings where we will explain and educate citizens about the process and how to fill out the forms. We also intend to do a video that we will have a YouTube link on the website about TSPLOST that can tell anybody at their leisure what the forms mean and what we're trying to accomplish.
And we're aiming for a November referendum, November 2017. Is there any clear reason why we wouldn't, allow a little bit more time to wait for the spring referendum?
Well, there are pros and cons to that, which we can share with you. But really, the impetus that is driving this recommendation is we made the assumption the mayor and commission would want to have the vote as soon as they could. But there are certainly other considerations to take into account.
I just feel like once the Citizen Advisory Committee is assembled, it might be good to hear their feedback on that timeline and see how they feel about this timeline. Because we do have several studies that are in the works right now that, some of which we probably won't be seeing any results from until this project process is underway. The West Broad study, the Downtown Health and Safety study. We've got some GDOT road safety audits, supposedly, the Atlanta Highway and Lexington corridor studies. So that's my concern, is that speeded up timeline and making room for the recommendations of those studies to be included in the TSPLOST.
Well, and I will share this with you, and Bill, while we are called to have specific projects on the referendum, they aren't specific as to a segment of road. I mean, you can still have bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements. You can still have sidewalk improvements, and we can have buckets that can go towards that. And in talking with our SPLOST staff and looking even at the bike pad master plan, if you were to push that 6 months, I don't think we'd have a completed plan with public input by that time period either. So we're not trying to rush y'all. There are certainly, we should have a healthy conversation about this. But I will say, don't feel constrained that you have to have everything absolutely spelled out. You can have buckets. And that's good flexibility to have as you're bringing forth projects over a 5-year period. Priorities may change. Other opportunities may come up for funding.
So if we vote to approve this timeline is kind of set in stone, or?
Well, it's a very structured process, and it is based on past precedent, and we want to allow adequate time for, the submission of projects, the staff review, the citizens advisory, and if you'll remember in reading it, there's an iterative process where they bring to you a list of priority projects, which is 150% of all the money, and then you give them some feedback and they whittle it down to candidate projects. So that's orchestrated, and as y'all know, on July 1st is when we hit the ground running with our other partner cities.
And that advisory committee is also responsible for fundraising for a kind of marketing campaign to help educate the public and try and gain support for the referendum? That's
absolutely right. SPLOST law does not allow you as an elected body to advocate for this, nor staff, and that's traditionally been the role of Citizens Advisory Committee.
I mean, those are my concerns when it comes to that committee and their responsibilities. I feel like it would be helpful to have them weigh in on this timeline to see how they feel about about that kind of timeline.
But our attorney or our manager can correct me if I'm wrong. It's not limited just the selling of the projects, the marketing of the public information is not limited just to this committee, though. For instance, if the Chamber of Commerce wanted to take this on and be an advocate for it, to inform the community about it, that's still a possibility. So it doesn't rest totally in the committee, but we'll be leaning heavily on them for help with it. Ms. Wright, you want to offer something?
And you might not have this information now, that maybe you can send it to us. I tried to find it, and I wasn't able to find the existing election calendar for 2017 and 2018 to see if we can piggyback this and not have the cost specifically just for this referendum. Is that something you can send us?
Yes, I can answer that now.
Okay.
The only election on the November 2017 ballot is a couple of seats in the city of Winterville, so there will not be a countywide election, and it will require a special election. And the last time we held something like that was roughly on order of $30,000.
So you're saying November, in 2017, the only election is going to be that November one?
Well, it'll be this, no, I'm sorry. The first opportunity based on our schedule for an election is November of 2017, and on that date, there is a City of Winterville election, which is not countywide. The next opportunity is in March, but Bill, March is not one of the dates that the legislation allows a vote, so it'll be May. May of 2018 would be the next opportunity.
So it's not allowed in the March. Then if we didn't grab that November 2017, our next opportunity would be May 2018.
That's correct. And there is a countywide election on the 2018. I think that's the mayor's race and a couple of commissioners.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Harrod.
Can I ask a question? If there is a TSPLOST referendum, obviously we hope that it passes. If it does not pass, is there a time limit before we can have another one? And if so, what is it?
There is no time limit. You could just do it at the next permitted election, which is essentially, there's twice a year, except in presidential years, when you can have it.
Can I follow up?
You sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Please.
And then also at the work session, we did talk about having a kind of a job description ready for potential people that would serve on the advisory committee. Is that still in the works at some point?
Yes, but we did ask more specificity in your attachment about what's expected, but we can certainly flesh that out more. Okay. For you to take out as you try to recruit folks to do this important work.
Do you have anything else, Andy? Gelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm looking, Blaine, at just the kind of sequence of tasks, particularly between 5 and 8, from the time projects are submitted to the final list of candidate projects. And we've talked about a couple of project types. We've talked about some specific projects. An example would be, somebody may move forward with a desire for a multi-use path between Old Winterville Road and Southeast Clark Park. That'd be a very specific project. And then we've talked about these project buckets. And so sort of a comparable project bucket might be multi-use paths generally, or the Greenway Network. In that kind of sequence, would there be the opportunity for clustering if 3 different citizen groups bring together some projects that really kind of dovetail into one another on the staff level? Would you guys feel comfortable sort of making some consolidated recommendations?
I understand what you're saying, and we do expect that there probably will be some redundancy in submissions, and that there may be different nuances to them, and we've talked about that. We're going to have to try to attempt to bring those together in a way that makes sense. But yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
One thing we don't want to do, for instance, let's just say that you had 5 different citizens happen to put together 5 different segments that added up to a really long length. That could push the cost up so high that it would not meet consideration because it's competing with others too. So it just has to make sense from a destination standpoint, I think.
Okay.
Mr. Neesmith, thank you.
Mr. Neesmith?
Yes, ma'am. As far as the Citizens Advisory Committee making recommendations about the scheduling, would it be feasible for that to be part of their task in the November to February process, or is that just too late to be deciding what the schedule is?
Well, I guess the sooner you got them on board, the more meaningful their input would be, and the longer you get down the road, the less flexibility you have to change the schedule if you stay with the November.
I mean, I'm not necessarily in favor of their doing that, but if it does no harm, then perhaps we should make that their first task. And maybe they need to do that in November.
Well, in order to gain a clear consensus of the commission, we would need to have that interaction, and then we need to come back to you with an agenda item to make sure that we are following the process that the consensus of y'all want to see.
Right. The concern I have about projects where we haven't really fleshed out the cost or the scope very well isn't so much the flexibility. It does give us that. I'm more concerned about whether or not the citizens are going to vote for something like that. That's my concern there. If they don't know exactly, or not exactly, more precisely what that item on the referendum is. So it's just my feedback about that.
Well, and you could certainly, much like our last SPLOST, have a mix where you have some general buckets and some very specific projects that are indicative of, so people know what they're voting for.
Yeah, I don't recall any projects like that on our last SPLOST.
Well, for instance, I mean, the jail's a very specific project. The cooperative extension is the fire station. We didn't just build a bucket saying public buildings.
Right.
So, for instance, if there is a segment of trail that you want to call out, or, for instance, Whitehall and Millage Roundabout could either fall inside a road improvements bucket, or it could be called out by itself. But y'all have the ability to make those selections and telegraph this back to the Citizens Committee, so you have a package that is attractive to the voters.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anybody else? Okay. We'll move on to our.
Discussion.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Y'all want to no, I think it needs to stay on discussion. Absolutely. I'm sorry.
Well, Madam Mayor, I was wondering, the manager mentioned that if you could get a consensus from us about the scheduling, or whether or not we ask the Citizens Committee to finalize the scheduling, then he could provide us with something for the voting meeting. Can we reach a consensus on that? Or am I just barking up a tree here?
No, I think it would be fine if the commissioners want to express what their thoughts are on that. Anybody else want to weigh in on it?
Well, I feel that because it's such a structured process, that getting this committee together and having them start with the structure outlined with what meets us trying what has already been researched and being the quickest way we can do it, I think that the committee would appreciate this structure coming to them, because they've got a lot to do as it is, and then so I'm okay with this learning, especially that it's really the first election we can do it, is that November one.
Well, one of the things that concerns me is that we're going to have a SPLOST project coming up immediately after this, and I think we could end up with some confusion if we go beyond the November.
Yeah, the regular
timeframe.
SPLOST.
Yeah.
Correct.
Who was?
Mr. Hamby.
Who?
Mr. Hamby.
Mr. Hamby was next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
My head doesn't swivel fast enough.
And I just want to say, obviously the 10 of us are having trouble decide this. I would hate to see what 22 would have trouble deciding. So my preference would probably be that we hold the election in May, when we know more people would probably go vote for it. We've always been a commission that likes to have elections at times. We've asked our state delegation to move our elections to November, as a matter of fact, so that more people could vote in local elections. And barring that happening, let's allow our citizens to vote when we know a good number of people are coming out. So 5 of you are up for re-election that year, and then we'll have a mayor's up for, well, not re-election, but a new mayor is up for election. So I think you'll have a good number of people out interested in that and voting. So,
Mike, I want to make sure that you're understanding there won't be an election for anything else. This will be a single item.
I'm talking about May of 18.
Of 18.
When we have local elections, right?
But we're talking about May of, okay.
No, he's advocating for
May of 18
May of
instead
18.
of November of 17, when we'd have to
Oh, okay.
pay the extra money. And we can't collect the money till April anyway. So it does give us 1 month of leaving something on the table, but it gives us more active participation in the decision, I believe.
Andy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So one of the issues about delaying it till May is the question of it then starts to get closer time-wise to any kind of re-upping, if I can't think of the correct word at the moment, but renewal of a future SPLOST vote after the current one ends. As everybody, at least behind the rail, knows, though, the current SPLOST is not a fixed time SPLOST, it's a fixed amount SPLOST. And obviously that's then going to determine when it ends. So do we have any information on what our sales tax revenue income is based upon the current SPLOST to get a better idea of when it will actually likely finish?
Well, from what we've projected, and again, we think it's going to expire in the first quarter of 2020, which you'd want to have a no later than March 2019 vote to keep that going if it passed. What we see now, if you push it 6 months forward, and Commissioner Hamby, collections won't start until October 1st as opposed to April with the push, you would be within 10 months. There's only 10 months separation between the TSPLOST vote and the SPLOST vote as opposed to the current recommendation of 1 year and 4 months. So there's a little more separation. And of course, if we want to give thoughtful time to that Citizen Advisory Committee, there's going to be some overlap. They're going to be meeting and talking projects while y'all are finishing up deliberations on the TSPLOST.
Mike, just a second. Did anybody else want to speak before I call on Mike? Go ahead, Mr. Hamby.
I get the feeling the mayor just didn't want to call on me tonight. But
Kind of scares me.
You were tardy.
But I guess in my response to that, Commissioner Harrod and Manager Williams, is that certainly if we're looking at that SPLOST schedule, which I know we're not now, but it puts us in the same boat. I mean, we don't, as far as having a SPLOST election in March of 19, when there is only the Winterville election taking place, as far as we know at this point in time. So in March or sometime in 20, we have several different local elections that would be occurring. And another presidential year. And I'll be up for re-election at that point, so. As a matter of fact,
Big year.
yeah, maybe so.
Well, Mayor, perhaps
Yes,
I can
sir.
offer to send y'all this week for your consideration a comparison of the two schedules, what it would look like, the SPLOST and TSPLOST, November versus May overlap, as well as what staff, just the initial pros and cons that we see
Good.
of either approach. And we'll share that with you and leave that for your discussion.
I think that would be very helpful because I don't believe we're going to come to a conclusion tonight. So, any further discussion on this?
Yeah, I think at some point, we're going to need to get a feeling for what other municipalities around us are considering a TSPLOST referendum. So, because the question we're going to get is, we're going to pay 8% sales tax? Is that going to be the highest in Northeast Georgia? I don't know. But that's going to be a problem. I think we need to get a feel for that.
Mr. Harrod?
Thank you. This may be in the documents that we received, and I might have missed it, but Bill, given we're a consolidated government, we have the option on the TSPLOST as well of either having a fixed term or a fixed amount TSPLOST, or does it have to be a fixed?
It's 5 years.
Term? Okay, okay, all right.
Anybody else got any questions or comments?
If y'all would have listened to me months ago, we could have already had this thing passed, and I've got the list of projects ready. So,
I guess every broken clock is right twice a day, Mike.
Well, that actually completes our agenda tonight.
We have one other item.
Oh.
7.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we do have one more. Yeah. Athens Downtown Development Authority, and this is for us to decide whether or not we want to include government properties in the Downtown Development Authority. And I think that it's actually was amended late this afternoon. I hope everybody got the final version of it. Mr. Hamby.
And I'd just like to share with y'all, this is something we've been discussing in ADDA for quite some time, and this is a request we made of our state legislature last cycle, and they felt like more work was needed to be done on it, and that's ADDA's taken it to heart and has done some more work on it. We've been sending out letters to people that would be most affected by it. And the letter includes, what their current tax rate would be and what the extra mill would be for some folks. But we're also trying to demonstrate what the benefits of being in the Downtown Development Authority would mean to the property owners and to whatever or whoever tenants are renting their property, or if it's the property owner itself. So certainly those are at play as well. And what this action by this body, hopefully that will be positive, will increase the district boundaries to allow for opportunities of government-owned property, should we choose to do something with those at some point in time, and open the door for that. But I'll also share with you that we are planning, that Downtown Development Authority is planning to do an open house, which you'll get some invitations to, hopefully I think it's going to be about the end of the year, if I'm correct, in what Director Thompson mentioned to us at our last meeting. An open house to share with y'all and with interested members of the district and potential interested members of the district what the benefits are of being in the downtown district. So I think you'll be pleased with what you hear.
Anybody else? Well, go ahead, Mr. Neesmith.
I have a technical question. Commissioner Hamby, is that on South Finley Street? Is that yellow line coming in and making the district
We're not taking
smaller?
anything out. No.
That yellow line goes right there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is. But
Okay, so that's wrong.
leave it to Commissioner Neesmith or Commissioner Harrod to point out everything that's wrong.
That's what we get to be
Mr. Bailey.
Part of our skill set.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I looked at these materials, and of course, we just got them this afternoon, so it's a little unclear to me, and hopefully staff can illuminate me and let me know. It's a little unclear whether, if we approve for the unified government's property to be included, and I understand it still has to go for a state vote, but if it's not approved by the private property owners, are we still going ahead? Are we still taking our property and expanding the boundaries if the state legislature approves that? Did I frame that question where it makes sense?
We did.
And I'll check into this. I'm not sure we can unilaterally change the boundary.
We can't, and we did. That was that was the legislation we asked for the legislatures to look at last year, was to go ahead and include the county-owned property, and they felt like they didn't want us to keep coming back and forth every session to include parcels of property in that manner. So we've decided to see if we can get the counties in there as others are getting in there as well. Hopefully, that'll work out.
So then it's
I would imagine.
all or nothing?
I would imagine that's a question we'll have to ask the legislatures, but I would imagine that to be the
And
case.
the Downtown
based on
Development,
last year.
the Downtown Development Authority would have to decide whether to go forward with it if private property owners did not sign up for it. But one of the reasons that this is being asked for is that you have to have continuous property lines. So there may be cases in which, without the county's property, a property wanted to come in, but they wouldn't be able to because they'd be prohibited, because they wouldn't have contiguous line with the development authority as it exists now. And for y'all's information, the Housing Authority Board has voted to include their properties. So they've already taken that vote. So it'll be a decision of ADDA, whether or not they go forward this year with what they have when the time frame is exhausted. So, Ms. Link.
Yeah, I just want to point out that this new proposed boundary includes that first block of Prince Avenue from Pulaski to the Barbara Finley intersection, which I feel sends a very clear message that that is part of downtown. We have a lot of new development coming over there, and we need to start accepting the fact that we need to maintain the infrastructure to take on that development.
It's basically functioning as downtown.
It is. It definitely is.
Mr. Gertz.
Sort of along the lines of the contiguous property question, and maybe this is best directed at Bill. Could there be a hole in the map? Let's say, basically a circle or donut of property owners would be happy to be part of the ADDA boundaries, but then there's an isolated property owner who's not interested. Could they remain out of it?
The way I read the letter, is that they're only going to submit a map with property owners who consent. So it could make for a pretty patchwork kind of map. You know, I know the legislature's gotten very creative with election districts and annexations, so I'm sure almost anything's possible.
Maybe I can
Mike,
share
yeah.
some light on this also, and maybe it'll encourage people to also get the letter back, whether or not they consent or not. But it was the Downtown Development Authority, under the suggestion of a member of the Downtown Development Authority and of the Downtown Development Authority attorney, to send a letter out and asking those who do consent to send it back. And certainly if we don't hear back from anybody, then we would count as affirmative, sort of almost like certainly what we do with historic districts, you know, in that manner. So we're looking for a contiguous map.
So if they don't opt out, they've opted in,
Right.
basically. Ms. Wright?
So silence, Mike, is, Commissioner Hamby, so silence is implied consent as far as the letter?
In this case, in a lot of cases that we do, is
Yeah.
like with historic
Okay.
districts, it would be.
So it's consistent with
Yes.
some of the other mail-outs
That's correct.
that we do?
But my understanding is we're going to reach out to those property owners again. We're not, it's not going to just end with sending a letter.
Certainly, yeah,
Yeah.
certainly. And we have reached out to them already several
Yeah.
times in this discussions.
Anybody else? Okay, well, now we've concluded our agenda, and I just want to take a point of privilege right quick to officially welcome VoxPro to our community. I think you all know that I had the rare privilege of going with the governor's group of economic development professionals to Ireland. And while I was there, we went into Dublin, and for one time in my life, I cheered for Georgia Tech, because I've got to cheer for a Georgia team if we're playing a Boston team. So it was an odd thing to me that Georgia Tech and Boston College were having a football game in Dublin, Ireland. But it was made for some very interesting conversations. But while I was there, I went into Cork and actually took a very extensive tour of the operation that VoxPro has there. Extremely impressed with it. It's a very large operation. They're almost doubling their size every year. And I think it's going to be an absolute wonderful opportunity for Athens. I think it's going to put us on the map for some other companies that didn't know existed. You know, of course, Google is one of their clients, Airbnb, and there's been some comments to the effect that this was just a call center with minimum wages, which I found not to be true from what I saw in Cork. And while I was there, I was given a manual by the HR person, and didn't have time to look at it till I got back home, and I went through it and read it this weekend. And it's actually a manual of training sessions that they have. They call it VoxPro U, where any employee that's interested can go through these training modules and be ready for promotion as those promotions come up, and they have a commitment for their promotions to be internal. So I think it's something that's going to be a really great thing for our community. So happy to have them here. So,
Mayor?
thank you, everybody. Yes, sir.
The EMS Oversight Committee, was that something you wanted to address this evening?
I'm sorry.
The appointment to the EMS Oversight Committee, Chief Scarborough?
Yeah, thank you. I expect to do it next time, but this is as good as any. I will announce to
Madam
you.
Mayor, I move for suspension of rules.
Second.
Okay, suspend the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I will announce that I have appointed Chief Scarborough to be on our Citizens Committee for the EMS operation that we share with the Athens Regional Hospital and St. Mary's. So, and we've had a vacant position on there for some time, and I've had a hard time finding the appropriate person, and I think Chief Scarborough is going to represent us extremely well. So, thank you, guys.